point of contact to partner with Tumbler Ridge in conversations, not only in this one, but as an advocate and champion for Tumbler Ridge on a go-forward basis to discuss connectivity and how we can bring wins and opportunities to Tumbler Ridge. And so I'd had a conversation with the mayor, and when I first came into the role, and I've been performing this function for the Northern BC portion of my portfolio for the last 5 months or so, and been doing the job in Northern Alberta for about 5 years. So I've got lots of exposure to how we can coordinate and partner to win. And early in my engagement with the mayor, we had some discussions about how do we improve connectivity in Tumbler Ridge. And I'll tell you that there's a encyclopedia of information internally about TELUS's dealings with Tumbler Ridge. And to be frank, I think we've maybe overshot the mark in terms of how to complicate a relationship to drive connectivity. And so what I'm hoping to do today is have a bit of an open dialogue around just easily what TELUS is doing, what our focus is on a broad basis, and then quickly get down into a conversation around our plans for investment in Tumbler Ridge, and then, if open, opportunities to collaborate to expedite those plans in the event of interest from council. So that's the plan, and certainly feel free to ask questions as we move forward or through. You don't have to wait or hold your questions till the end, and we can have a dialogue about how we enhance connectivity in the region. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, so from a TELUS overall perspective, we've been focused on enhancing connectivity since our inception. But from a TELUS perspective, we look at our core function as connecting people from coast to coast, so the things we care about the most. And for us, connectivity has always been important. It's certainly exacerbated in a COVID environment, and I've been hearing that from municipalities and constituents from across the entire region. Certainly it becomes a huge differentiator, not only in terms of global competitiveness, economic development, but also even just in the current state, and I'm sure as you all know in this council, even ability to go to school, right, or to work. And so in 2013, we started on a journey to begin deploying fiber optic connectivity across Alberta and BC. And we started in the rules with the intention of learning how to deploy the facility, bringing wins and connectivity for all the reasons stated before with respect to areas that have maybe degraded plant. And so we started a series of investments and to the tune of about $5 billion over that time frame. Communities that are close by that we have fiberized that you'd be very familiar with are Dawson Creek and Port St. John, along as you go further east, Peace River, and there are many more to be done. The challenge with it is that there's a significant investment envelope required to do these communities. I mentioned $5 billion over that 7-year window, and we could easily spend that over the next 5 years and still not be done. And the single biggest challenge with it is the cost and the resources available to do this work. Because it is such a significant initiative, and it's not just a Canada piece, it's a global, worldwide initiative to deploy fiber optic networks. The skill set, the resources to do that work are in high demand, and it's a very labor-intensive activity, and it's quite disruptive to communities as we do that work. And so there's that challenge, but also as we move further north, there's the challenge of seasonal ability to build, because as the weather gets more harsh, and not that we've really seen that this year, knock on wood, in a very unusual winter, we do have a limited ability to build while the weather is a little more temperate. And so our plan in terms of deploying fiber and deploying network enhancement is really a four-suited plan and 4 separate pillars. The first is that we've invested heavily in our copper facility and our copper transport, especially over the last couple of years, to do some remediation on plants with the intention of enhancing speed capability. And in Tumbler Ridge, we've increased our service speed capability in parts, and I'll reinforce the word parts of Tumbler Ridge, to up to 50 megabits per second. but that is determined upon your distance from the central office. The further away you are, and by the way, it might not be as the crow flies, it might be as the cable is laid, the worse speed that you will get, or the slower speed that you will get, and the more degraded that copper cable connection will be. So we are continuing to look at ways to remediate that facility and enhance services over it. But you do get to a place with copper facilities where it can't be upgraded further. So it gets to kind of an end of life, and it's important too as we kind of work through this conversation to understand that copper facilities were laid when they were laid to exist as party voice lines, and for that facility and for that service, that was a great marriage. It worked fine for that. It worked fine for voice. As internet culture and the internet evolved into its current capability, it's not hard to see that a product that wasn't purpose-built for internet connectivity and the demands of high-speed data transmission is having a hard time keeping up. So we're exploring ways to address that, and there are some unique things that we've put in place to do that. We have a plan in place to continue to explore that, and that's something that we keep doing. The second part of that four-pillar approach is custom wireless and our wireless deployment. So over the same window, we've been, of the 7-year window, we've been deploying enhanced 4G LTE networks and 5G, recently the invention of 5G capabilities and introduction of that to our northern market. We, even as recently as 18 months ago, invested just over $1 billion in spectrum to deploy 5G cell service, and that 5G cell service we see as a real epiphany for rural communities. So if a lot of this is filling out of your depth, or I'm drawing too deep, here's a headline for you. 5G cellular-enabled modems or gateways can easily meet the CRTC guideline of 50 megabits per second down and 10 megabits per second up, and specifically the spectrum that TELUS is invested in is a rural-friendly spectrum for that service. And so we continue to invest in the deployment of that spectrum to upgrade to all of our cell sites in the region to enhance service capabilities. And so that is something, a journey that we're on, and we will continue to invest in those capabilities over the foreseeable kind of 18 to 24-month roadmap and then beyond. The third pillar of things that we can do is a combination of our other service delivery assets. So we can do custom cable footprints or investment in cable-based DOCSIS cable facilities to deliver service. Or through our acquisition of ABC Communications, we can also look at a deployment of point-to-point microwave solutions where you use radio waves to deliver service. And then lastly, the fourth pillar is our custom fiber footprint and the deployment of fiber. Now, in my conversations with both the mayor and CAO, I've shared that while it would be in our best interest as a service provider to make as many premises as possible eligible for our services through the deployment of fiber, the cost means it's only something that we can stomach on an annual basis from a cost perspective incrementally. So we can't do every premise all the time for the reasons I mentioned before, but we do have a roadmap, and we're looking to deploy fiber. Now, if you do nothing as a council, TELUS will continue to invest in enhancing those facilities through the way that I've discussed. We'll look at enhancing the copper remediation further. Copper speeds tend to top out at the 150 megabit per second mark, and there's some investment we can do to make that happen, and we're committed to making that happen. Now, the 5G capability that I mentioned before is another really great way that will drive connectivity, and specifically improving service along the highways and out going both east and west will be a significant benefit on Highway 52 and Highway 97. So you'll see those improvements happen. If you would like to collaborate, there is an opportunity that we took away from conversation with Mayor and Council, Mayor and CEO, about a co-funded fiber deployment. And so we could look at collaborating on a partnership using the fiber route and fiber infrastructure that is deployed just to the outside of Tumbler Ridge on one side, build a 45-kilometer fiber loop on the other side that would come off of Highway 97 and then further south, and then deploy a fiber deployment to 95% of premises in Tumbler Ridge. And we say 95% because oftentimes we get into scenarios where maybe there are fringe places. I mean, obviously we'd love to be higher than 95, but that's the number that we tend to work through. And that cost of that build from an overall build perspective would be about $6 million. I would be happy to contribute $5.1 million of that investment to Tumbler Ridge and find through either grants or through a funding envelope receive the additional $900,000 to deploy fiber, likely in the 2022-2023 window. So given that we're full for 2021, we'd have to have those conversations about 22, but we could start that dialogue and look at a way to bring this to fruition. And when you're deploying fiber, now you're talking about gig level service in every premise, 95% of premises in the community. So that's the first part. And there's another really cool part that would come with that fiber deployment, which is as we deploy the fiber network, we also deploy what we call small cell microwave sites, which basically recreate a small scale 200 square feet area of ultra fast connectivity for cellular. And what this would do is essentially, as we build the network in a fiber deployment, we would then overlay a cellular network in this enhanced fiber-fed cellular network in Tumbler Ridge as well, which would mean that we'd have that same ultra-fast wireless capability, and then that gives us a chance to reposition our existing cell sites that are now deploying that 5G capability to service the rural communities too. And I know that specifically the mayor has mentioned that there was an interest in some of the industrial and natural resource opportunities that are east and west of the community. This would provide, just by happening, this with nothing else happening, this would provide enhanced cell coverage to those businesses and opportunities. So I know that I've talked now for about 10 minutes without breathing. I'll pause just to see if there's any questions in the room or any clarification required.
Thank you, Brian. Council, any questions at this time? Councillor Norbury.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for calling in today. I just would like to clarify a statement you said, because we are on the phone. Just want to make sure I heard you properly. But your proposal, one of your proposals is that it would cost $6 million to bring in fiber into Tumbler Ridge, which $5.1 million would be funded by TELUS, and the other $900,000 would be provided through grant opportunities you're going to be looking for. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's a great question, and thanks for the clarification point there. That 900K just essentially needs to be found from somewhere. So I'm open to deploying, having my grant writing team look for grants, funding that's available. That's one avenue. Other avenues that I've worked with other municipalities on, and I can provide some references if you'd like to go discuss with them, is through just a direct contribution from the municipality to take care of that. Other instances we've had is we've been able to work with developers to make that occur. But essentially, we have a 900K gap that we need to close to make this partnership and this connectivity come to life.
Okay, thank you. Follow-up, Councillor?
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Yes, thanks for being here, Brad. I just have a question about back in 2010, 2011, there was a partnership formed between TELUS and one of our major industrial partners, Western Coal, which went 50-50 on a project that brought services to where they are now. And since then, we've been trying to get the last piece finished, and in 10 years have had no success with TELUS. Can you tell me why or how this could work better for us this go around?
Well, totally fair is the first thing I'll say. I hate to be the guy that says that wasn't me, but I'll take full responsibility for it as the leader of TELUS. I think the difference this time versus last time is like I have a resume of making these things come to life. You know, we've announced partnerships that are much bigger than this. I would even argue in terms of scale, size, scope, funding that have happened, and I'm happy to share a view of municipal references, the people that you can reach out to confirm whether or not there's legitimacy to the claims that I'm making. But I can tell you that one of my passions and part of the reason I advocated to take on the Northern BC portfolio is because I have experience with rural connectivity and overcoming the challenges that happen. We've lined this up internally to say, you know, if we can find the 900,000, we would be able to make this partnership work and deliver on it. And so I'm very confident that we could do it. And I think, for what it's worth, I think Tumbler Ridge could be a model community for Northern BC in terms of, you know, getting this connectivity and leading the way forward in connectivity partnership with TELUS.
Follow up, Councillor Kirby?
Yes, thank you for that, Brian. Also, when you say that rural communities are being taken care of first, do you consider Tumbler Ridge a rural community?
Well, it depends. I think Tumbler Ridge is in a rural area. It's an urban community in a rural area. And so I look at the surrounding landscape when I make the comment around rural versus urban. And one of the challenges for us as a service provider is the distance that we have to bring the other side of the fiber ring. So we're taking it from the Highway 97, bringing it straight down south. And that terrain is quite challenging to deploy in. Once you get to Tumbler Ridge, you're in an urban environment. But everything surrounding, and I would argue probably the reason it's such a beautiful place to live, is that rural component of the community. So having been there multiple times and looking at, I wouldn't classify the town proper as a rural community, but certainly the surrounding area I would.
Okay. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So I had a question, Brian, about the area, like the service area that we're looking at here. Are you aware of our heavy industrial area in Tumbler Ridge? And is there opportunity to bring this high-speed internet to that area as well?
So yes, number one, that was a conversation that Mayor Bertrand and I had at length, was to make sure that we considered the industrial opportunities with this build. And so I think yes would be the short answer. I think what we would be doing as part of the proposed connectivity partnership would immediately improve service for them anyway over our cellular enhanced cellular capabilities. Beyond that, though, there's a huge benefit, and it becomes like a trickle-down effect of once you bring the redundant facilities, especially down that southern corridor where they currently don't exist. Now you've removed so much of the cost to connect that industrial area and those businesses, and so I'll give you some first-hand experience where this works best. And my history of it is doing, one-to-one partnerships with TELUS and the municipality. Where it gets complicated is bringing other players to the table. So, going public, private, or, any form of that. And it's because of the, while you might have a shared goal of everybody having connectivity, how you get there is potentially different. And so for the industrial area, what I propose is if we were to form a partnership, so that we could make this work, and by the way, I believe we can, then I would be immediately reaching out to those businesses and sharing that this was happening. I think we could do that in partnership, to share that. And by the way, have examples of that working with municipalities as well, and then bringing them to the table and saying, great, look at what this partnership has done. How would you like to connect to it? And then making that work for them. So instead of having TELUS plus Tumbler Ridge carry the additional cost, and there would be additional cost of connecting those businesses, we've already taken so much lion's share of that transport build cost already. It becomes a lot more feasible for an industrial business to then say, look, I can connect to this for $12,000 or what have you. And it, I'm throwing a number out, but that's not an incredulous number for it to be once we get the transport there. So does that answer your question?
Councilor Norbury.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. It does, and I appreciate your willingness, and it seems like you have a very positive desire to see this happen. So I definitely can tell that through your conversation today. I want to say that I appreciate that. Thank you.
This can happen, and by the way, this has happened. I look at the situation in front of us and say this is not a huge hurdle to jump. It's really, do we have the will to do it effectively together? And I'm really keen to make this happen. So I appreciate the acknowledgement there.
Thank you, Brian. Just one thing, Brian, can you explain and maybe elaborate a little bit more on the redundancy line that you were talking about and how that plays into the build cost?
Sure. So the way that our facility and our fiber network is built, it requires a redundant component of build. So essentially this, especially for where your community is located, I think this matter, and in disaster situations, you really do want this. But for us, it's a requirement for our network build. So we already have existing fiber facilities that start on Highway 2, they come down Highway 52, and then they sit right outside of Tumbler. Right? I think we've acknowledged that those facilities are there. So that's one side of our redundancy pair. The other side is what we don't have. And so that would be facilities coming from the west, where Highway 97, where we have highway transport corridor fiber. We have some facilities that comes down about halfway, but about 45 kilometers as the crow flies from Tumbler Ridge, we do not have facilities. So our fiber facilities end, we have nothing there. So what we would essentially be doing as part of this build, before we could even begin connecting premises or doing work in the urban area of Tumbler Ridge, instead, we would first have to start by building the additional fiber transport to complete that redundant loop. And so that work would be, it's about 45 kilometers northwest of Tumbler. We would start there, we would bring it right into the community, and then that would complete both portions of a redundant fiber network. And what you get from that fiber network, aside from, that's our build standard, is that in the event of a cut on one side of the fiber facility, you get an immediate, it's 8 milliseconds, swap over to the other side, which would mean that you don't have community isolation scenarios. Say that there is a wildfire or a forest fire or something like that, or an earthquake, or have an avalanche, or any of the things that can befall a community situated where you are. You have that resiliency of network, and that's part of the reason we build it that way, is to be a absolutely reliable and resilient connection that you can count on from not only from an economy perspective, but from a natural disasters protective services perspective. So that would be the first part of the build, and then once we got both sides of the redundancy in place, we then begin completing the immediate to the premise connection. And I should add that those to the premise connections are free to the residents of those connections, and we would work with each individual property owner to make sure that it's done to their standard and expectation, and work individually to get property right access to go across their yard and connect to their premise or apartment building.
Thank you, Brian. Council, any other questions? Councillor Howe?
Yeah, Brian, do we have fiber in the downtown core of Tumbler Ridge?
So, the question of do we have fiber, there's a fiber strand, and from a privacy perspective, I can't share who it's for or what it's for, but and just to be clear, any business or any person could request fiber facilities. We're happy to put, I've told people we can put fiber on the moon if you want. The challenge is getting it there and the cost to do that. And so we do have some active fibers that are not redundant, that are business services for residents in the community. But there's not a mass market offer for fiber in the community.
So in order for us to get fiber to the homes in Tumbler Ridge, we have to create a redundant system. So it has to come in the last 45 kilometers. We can't utilize the existing stuff that's off of Highway 52.
Right. Well, we would use that. That would be the first part of our path. But understand that the businesses that have that fiber connection have, service level agreements with us that would say we have to come fix that loop within this amount of time. Pro and mass market business offers, our fiber network is built for redundant standards.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the redundancy 45 kilometers is along Highway 29, Chetwynd Highway, to connect up to about Meikle Wind. That's where the fiber line comes from Highway 97 south along Highway 29. So that would be the loop that so 52 is already in place, but Highway 29 isn't quite.
Yeah, I
complete.
understand that, but like having to pay for that last 45 kilometers to get high-speed internet in the community when it's already at kilometer 52 is the portion that I didn't understand. And he's explaining to me that you gotta make a redundant loop in order for us to have it, although it's already here and you can order it, it's somebody else's line more than anything, right? So,
Yeah.
I got a couple more questions.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor.
So you talked about small cell microwave sites. Can small cell microwave sites be deployed anywhere along the line that there's that there's a fiber line, or does it have to be when it's in the community? Like, for instance, we have quite a few dead areas along the highway of 29. Can we do those small cell microwave sites along there? Off the pole?
Yeah, it's an interesting proposition, right? And so the small cell, the reason we call them small cell is because it is quite a small area that they cover. Now, if you're on foot, a 200-meter radius is pretty significant. If you're driving a car, it's not. But what would be enabled by this ability to deploy transport is that we could do additional cell sites in the region that are now going to be fiber fed and enable that capability. So I don't think it would be purpose built for a highway dead zone coverage scenario. But remember that what would happen immediately, and this is a really interesting conversation, is that the name of the game in cell is you have a finite number of cell sites, and they have omnidirectional or 360-degree antennas. But essentially what you want to do is point those cell antennas at the area where all the people are. So in the region, like in the Tumbler Ridge area, all the cell sites that we have in the area are all pointed right at Tumbler Ridge. Now, it is not an accident that the highways get coverage as well, but we try to get the biggest swath of, and if you could see me with my hands right now, it's a helpful diagram, but you try to get the biggest swath of people in that net, essentially, right? You're trying to cover as many people as you can with the finite number of sites you have. When we deploy the small cell in as part of the fiber build, what happens is we're essentially overlaying a cell network over top of the one that already exists, right? So you're creating another cell network that's arguably more robust because of it being fiber backhauled and it's point to point. And so because of those things, it services that Tumbler Ridge. Right now you've now got two cell networks in Tumbler Ridge. Well, that's not an efficient thing or an effective thing with the scarce resources we have. So what would happen as an outcome of us deploying fiber, and part of the reason I brought it up, is we would take the existing cell sites right now that are pointed at Tumbler, and we would point them out toward the highway, right? And you start to get, now you're going to benefit your industrial partners to the east and the west. You're going to see better coverage on the highways, just because the highways aren't the focus right now. So they would be, or whatever various sect of the largest catchment would be. So I don't know if that makes sense without me making wild gestures with my hands, but I hope that it starts to swim in at least a little bit in terms of why this is such a great thing. You would see, just by building this, you're going to see significant benefits to cell service in the region on the fringe and on the highways.
Councillor Hall?
Yeah, totally makes sense. I hear where you're coming from. You can point it in different directions, get better service. The $900,000 gap that we talk about for 2022-2023 deployment, what type of a lead time do you need on approval of those funds? Is this some type of a thing that the money has to be up front before you start the project, or is this something that we can pay the money once the project has been completed?
So, and I mentioned, this is a great question. I mentioned this when we had previous discussion privately, but really our goal, right, I just want to be really clear about this, is to make service available. So, for us, we've done, and I've personally done deals with municipalities where we say, it's 3 payments over 3 years, and we do it when budget comes due and when you want it. We're not really fussed about when it is. It's not a loan, so it's not like an interest thing. We're doing this with the intention and the focus intent of creating this connectivity. So really we would be just elated to make the connectivity occur, and we could put on whatever, within reason payment schedule that would work for the municipality.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Council? Councilor Majinski?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Just one quick question on the small cell tower costs. So say we have a roadside pullout or a trailhead and we'd like to have boosted cell service too, and we want to add one in, how much would that cost approximately?
So what's really nice about this partnership, and I use that word purposely, is that if you say, so say that, I leave and you all talk about this and you say, hey, we're going to do this. So we come back, we get an agreement. In the agreement, we would specifically create a map of what would be covered as part of the build. And it becomes because you're contributing to the build, you become a valued stakeholder in the discussion, and we would sit down with council and say, here is the view. By the way, you see me so much, you'll be sick of me. Here is the view where we're going to build. So here's a shaded map of all the places where we would build. What do you think? Is this the right areas? And then you might say, well, no, actually, we want to add this one, or we want to add this corridor. This is very important to us. And part of the reason we do that is because nobody knows the master plan for the community better than the people sitting around the table right now, for the council, right? You've got the master plan in front of you, in the 20-year plan, et cetera. So if you know that, say, in 13 years you'd like to build an industrial park in this hectare or whatever, great. Then we can make sure that when we pass by, we leave a fiber pop there, so that we're built for future growth. Unlike the copper facilities that we have in the ground right now, which are quite not scalable. So as a contributor to the build, you become an equal partner in the discussions around where we would deploy, and we would build that into the agreement. And then throughout, as I'm giving you progress updates and we're working through the outcome, we would confirm that it met your needs. And most importantly, and again, happy to share with you references that would confirm this, but we're not going to pick up the shovel and leave until we've done a review with council that says, this is what we committed to in terms of a deployment, and this is where we are. Are you comfortable and confident that we've met our expectations and gotten that sign-off? So, in terms of adding additional hexagons or adding additional premises, certainly we can look at doing it. We'd be happy to scope that out.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, one more question on that topic then. So if we do go through these discussions and we want to have these small cell towers in our industrial park, RV park, golf course, steep rock, where there is no infrastructure for conduit there, those would these all be added costs on top of the $6 million total, or is this all been looked at already? Is this a blanket number, or is there a...
It's a great question, right? And transparently, the $6 million is our estimate of what it looks like based on our preferences. The number may or may not change a little bit in terms of total cost, but one thing I will commit to is whatever we would agree to once an agreement is signed, whether the number goes up on the TELUS side or not, we wouldn't come back and say, it's actually $935,000 or whatever is in the agreement is what's in the agreement, and we would base that number in. So, I'll give you an example. We did a community, and they had an industrial park that they wanted to fit in, and the industrial park was structured in 3 different sections, essentially. So the first 2 sections were really easy to do, and they didn't, they might have added $10,000 to the total cost. We said, fine, that's no big deal. But there was one, the 3rd section, which wasn't built yet, but it was a planned build, was about $350,000 to do. And so what we did was we went back to the municipality and said, hey, this is $350,000, what do you think? And what we actually ended up, because of that information, is they moved where they were going to put the park, and we were able to do it at a better rate. So that collaboration is really the thing that I think would trigger us to have a more effective dialogue. But there's not a gotcha. I want to be really clear. Like, there's not a gotcha. I'm putting 5.1 million capital up already. I'm not looking for a gotcha. I'm looking for a commitment from a partner to help with the payback period a little bit. That's all.
Okay. Any follow-up there, Councillor?
No, thank you very much for the explanation, and that definitely makes sense, because then it shows that we have some skin in the game and that we're committed to provide something for our residents and our industry, provide and our community. So I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. You mentioned that this is no cost to the consumer, which is, that's nice, but in the end, is high speed going to be more, is going to cost more to the consumer, or is it going to stay relatively the same?
Great question. So from our side, and we do national pricing on all of our facilities. So if you look in the West, any of you could go right now to TELUS.com/fiber and put in check how much internet costs. Those prices are not at a community level; they're national. So there would be no change versus our in-market plans in other places. On the residential side, and this is what is out there right now. The costs are negligibly different and actually a little bit less on the fiber for residential plans for like. But where you start to get into differences is in a higher speed tier. So if you're pricing a 50 meg copper service against a 50, we only offer 50 meg fiber, but like a 75 meg fiber plan, the fiber is probably a little bit less by a couple dollars a month. If you want a 1.5 gig fiber connection, it's, I think our in-market price right now is $160 a month. There's not a comparator for that plan, but by and large, the residential prices are cheaper, and where you actually see the benefit, the real benefit for business is on the biz side, specifically the small medium biz side. For your small medium businesses, they typically have a dedicated T1 or T3 or a speed managed service that would be delivering their facilities or their services. And whether you're a gas station or a grocery store or a mom and pop shop or a general store, you would be paying some level for a managed facility as a business. In a fiber world, our small medium business fiber plans for facilities are $150 a month. So they're significantly cheaper, factors of 10 cheaper for business owners. And you don't need, for most people, you don't need the managed component because we just built a state-of-the-art fiber network, right? That's now redundant, right? So we just talked about all the reasons why your facilities would never go down. This is the reason you wouldn't need a managed service. And so we find that specifically when I go to a Chamber of Commerce event in a fiber community, it's those stakeholders who are most passionate about the benefits, because not only do they now have the connectivity they need to compete on a global level, but they also are paying significantly less for those same service or for those enhanced services.
Thank you.
Councillor Howe?
Just gonna throw out the $900,000 question here. Is there any ability for payback to the District of Tumbler Ridge on the $900,000?
That's a good question. And by the way, I'd ask it if I was sitting in your chair. So the answer is no. We're looking for a contribution on this, and just to kind of be frank about it, these investments, so this $5.1 million, the payback period on it is 17 years, right? So in a current market plan, we wouldn't see a single dollar of actual profit until 17 years. The $900K takes us into like a 14 to 13 year window. And so really what we're trying to do with the $900K is to make it meet the criteria for TELUS to invest in a fiber program. And for us, that's the differentiator. So that's why there wouldn't be an interest in paying it back. At that point, we just put this back in the same DPP.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Council? Ms. Thompson?
Maybe just one other top up. Yeah, essentially on that one, what you're paying to do is to jump the queue. So I mentioned that there's a roadmap, and over a window of time, we would love to make the investment on our own. But what we find is that we're capital constrained, right? So you might say, well, how does TELUS decide where the capital is invested? Well, we do that based on a number of factors, but among them would be that payback period number. So by making the $900K contribution, the municipality would be essentially improving the business case. And again, it goes back to us doing business with municipalities that want to do business with us, to jump the queue. And I would argue that your benefit and payback would be in XDev and in your ability to be more attractive to residents through that connectivity as well, right? So that's just the other side of the top up I thought I had.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. Ms. Thompson, did you have any questions?
I do. I did have a question. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do have a question that came through by email, and it's regarding 5G. And it says, assume that's not millimeter wavelength.
Sorry, maybe you broke up. I heard it was regarding 5G, and it says assume millimeter wavelength.
Yeah, assume that's not millimeter wavelength. Basically, that there's two standards?
That's right.
Okay.
So the 5G spectrum that we would deploy through small cell is millimeter wave. It's a 3.5 gigahertz spectrum. That's what we would be looking to deploy as part of that, which, again, full transparency, the auction for the millimeter wave is upcoming, and we're looking to do that. In the interim, we would be using an enhanced 4G LTE network. But the overlay, the 5G cell network that we're investing in the region is a 600 megahertz band. So it's the low end of the spectrum, not the high end, which is what millimeter wave is.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, Council? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Brian. We very much appreciate your commitment to this and your participation this afternoon, answering all of our questions. And Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I just received one more question here, or actually I have a couple. I'll start with the first one. I just need to read it here for a second.
Sure.
I don't know.
Not question and answer period right now. It's council meeting, right? So if we go to a question and answer period, then yeah.
Ms. Thompson, where are the questions coming from?
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, they are coming through my questions and answers, sorry, as by email, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so we can follow up with Mr. Bettis after this part.
Sorry.
Yeah. No problem. Again, thank you, Brian. Do appreciate your frankness on this and your commitment to this, and thank you for your participation this afternoon, and we'll sure to get back to you as soon as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and everyone stay safe. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Participant exiting.
So I'd like to make a motion to discuss the presentation. Seconder, Councillor Krakauka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Well, I'd just like to give Council an opportunity to discuss the presentation. I'm curious on your thoughts. Councillor Majinski.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is 900,000 an acceptable number for us to provide service to the community? And if this is the number that they're looking to see us come forward with to expedite this process for 2022-2023, is there the option to even put in more dollars to bring something sooner than, and is it that much of a need to bring it to the community sooner? I just wanted to throw that out there. Because we've had talks in the past where it was 1.13, I think it was, 1.15 last year. So, another 20K into the mix or whatever. Are they willing to entertain that? Or are we willing to entertain that? Or is 900 our cap, and are we even willing to even consider this at that price and have we look at other people that can maybe, or other companies come in and do it for not that much capital from us. And there might be payback from us as well.
From what I understand, their resources are deployed for 2021 this year, and 2022 would be the earliest deployment available for TELUS. And from what I understand, and I believe Brian explained it, is that $900,000 investment takes the profitability timeline from a 17 to 18 year payback to 13 years, which is in TELUS's range for investment. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Norbury.
I'll make a comment. I mean, I think whenever we get presented with an opportunity, an option like this, we need to think about it a little bit before we start making commitments. But we've seen Tumbler Ridge receive grant opportunities, to this size, to provide services, and I'm hopeful that we can find a grant to potentially pay for this. And there's a lot of COVID recovery money coming around. We have NDIT. We have opportunities for funding, and I think we should at least make the attempt to go for that. At this point in time, I don't know if we can comment on Tumbler Ridge's residents' willingness to spend this time. I mean, that's hopefully people are listening and they'll provide their input. But I think we should at least be trying to find granting opportunities that potentially cover this, because $900,000, I mean, that's doable through grants, I think, and I would like that we start looking into those as soon as possible.
Yeah, we have done a little bit of research through NDIT. There is some connectivity grants available. Ms. Thompson, could you elaborate on that, please?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So NDIT does have a last mile application. The grant deadline this year is March 15th of 21. However, project completion would need to be March 31st of 2022. That doesn't mean that the grant wouldn't continue later on, but it would be up to 50% funding to a maximum of $300,000.
Through NDIT. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Howell?
Councillor Norbury touches on something there that we do need to start thinking this through. And, now that the numbers are public, it's $900,000 is the number we're looking at. But my initial thoughts on it when I first heard this was like, there's no way I want to spend $1 million to get fiber in Tumbler Ridge. And the more he laid it out, though, he said, we just want to get the fiber in there for you. And the payback time can be 3-5 years. When he starts throwing those numbers out, that then decreases the amount that we got to come up with right away to do this. We do have 2 to 3 years to start putting money away for this. $900,000 to 1,000 residents or homes or businesses in Tumbler Ridge is $900 per business or resident. If you told them they had to eat that in year one, there'd be a lot that wouldn't do it. But if we, for perspective, anyhow, if we're looking at something where you're taking it over 5 years and you're asking somebody to put up $200 per year to get you in that 5-6 year range, it's a lot more easier for us to swallow. And when you think about it's an investment. It's a $1 million investment that we don't get any immediate guaranteed return from, like is required through our municipal finance authority. But what would we get for spin-off in this? And I think one of the key things that he hit on that really piqued my interest was the increased cellular capacity in our outback or our rural areas, better connectivity for snowmobilers, for people out hunting or fishing or hiking, so that you get the safety aspect in there. This really does help our highways out as well. Perhaps being connectivity at our trailheads, so people could come out to a trailhead and you get 5G service or whatever at that 200 meters around that hub. I think that's an interesting thing that also could promote tourism and activity in the area. If you're somebody who has to be connected to the internet. I know I have friends in the health industry that they have to be able to respond in a certain amount of time, and that limits them to where they can travel within Tumbler Ridge to make it back to the clinic in a certain time because they don't have cell service in those areas. So there's those spin-offs that, that's just spitballing here, throwing stuff out, that when you start thinking about $900,000, maybe it isn't that far reaching. And of course, if we can knock it down in half a couple of times with some grants, he even said that they can go look for grants for us as well. And if we make this our priority and our focus, I think we could kick that thing in half quite easily and handle this, on that side of the number. So that's my thoughts on it.
I absolutely agree. One of the factors that I would like to see improved is the increased cell coverage on the highways, on both highways. It is it's quite stressful. I know from personal experience when not only working, but when my family travels the highway and there isn't cell coverage, it's stressful until you hear about it on the other side. So it is a safety aspect there, but I think the benefits of connectivity or better connectivity through fiber is so diverse that, when you start thinking about medical services, educational services, attraction and retention of residents, we are seeing currently a trend from people moving out of the cities to rural areas because a city is not where you want to be during a pandemic. And if there's capability to work from home and connectivity to be able to do that, it does put us on a different level, as well as the ability to move our advertising and our geopark and our museum capabilities to another level as far as connectivity goes. For example, the museum, if they were to upload a 3D photo or video, it takes a very long time, whereas they could, make 3D capabilities of some of their recent finds. They could do 3 or 4 of them in a day and have that available online with fiber. I think it just takes us to a different level, and through the Economic Resiliency Task Force, we've identified that connectivity is a huge concern in the community and should be a priority to try and improve quality of life in Tumbler Ridge. Councillor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I think you really hit the nail on the head in that we've been talking that we're in the digital revolution, and now we're in the internet revolution period. Like, we need to keep up, or we will fall behind in all of these innovations that the world is creating around us. And I think we need to stay with everybody rather than fall behind the times.
Yeah. And to be honest, I've been working on this file since inception here 2.5 years ago, or just over 2 years ago, and I'm quite excited for the fact that TELUS has come to the table with a proposal. They are the big player in the area. They're a big telecom, but they also have the infrastructure that is needed. And I'm really happy that Brian was able to put this together. I think from my first meeting with him in Dawson Creek to the time of the proposal was only about 2 months. So they have had some work done in the background to be able to get all of this put together for this proposal. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this so far. Yeah. Any other questions or comments, Council? Okay. All right, we'll move to question and answer period. Ms. Thompson, you did have a couple questions come through.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I apologize, I'm excited about the questions. So the question comes and it says, I don't want to know if they have brought bigger projects to life. I want to know about smaller communities. Of course, the bigger communities get served because that's where the money is. But what about smaller communities? Then the next question is there a minimum number of subs they need to make this happen? Or if they decide to go forward with this, will they go forward with this no matter what?
Okay.
And then the...
I'll answer that one.
Pardon me?
Can we pause and answer that one? Should we have an opportunity to answer them? Is they fine?
Well, if we can, I can't answer them currently. Councillor Howe? Or Councillor Norbury?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like when it came to the requirement for TELUS coming to town, it wasn't just how many subscribers they would have. It is on us if we can make this partnership work and if we can get the grant funding. I think that was pretty clear in I think that was laid out in the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. They say they're open to grants. There are a number of grants specifically for this. Have they had much luck getting grants, or are they mostly getting the shortfall from the communities themselves? There's a grant application already written that could probably be repurposed. 2021 is out, but 2022-23 is a fairly big target. If we start moving on this sooner, will it get done sooner, or will it be, it'll get done when it gets done?
Yeah, I think Councilman Majinski had that question as well, and from my speakings with Mr. Bettis, 2021 resources are deployed from TELUS, and 2022 would be the earliest available deployment. Councillor Howe?
I think when we're receiving questions through email or voicemail or text message or whichever way we're getting it, we should know who the person is, who the resident is, because, you know, if we get something in here that comes across as a tainted message back to TELUS, that's not the presentation we want to put forward. Not that I want to limit or quell anything that anybody says, but we should have an opportunity to hear who the person is. Somebody that has inside information on grants that are already written probably sounds like somebody that has a little bit more information than the average Joe out there. So we should know who those people are when they're written.
Yeah, I agree.
Seems like when they stand up in here, they should state their name.
Yeah, I agree. Ms. Thompson?
Sorry. The questions are coming from Trent Ernst.
Okay, thank you. All of those questions were?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay, does anyone else have any comment or questions? Councilor Norbury?
One thing I have is, do we have is Mr. Bettis available for people to ask him these questions personally? Because I think some of these questions would do well to go directly to him, or can we forward these along to him?
Yeah, I think we can certainly ask the questions on their behalf and follow up. Yeah. As long as appropriate, of course. Councillor Kirkhalka.
Thank you, Richard. I just want to keep track of this, so I hope it comes back before council. So we have a discussion, and I know kind of where Councillor Howell mentioned a lot of stuff I had on my table there, and that was in regards to some of the cells that could be accessible in the OPAC on our highways. Really important, especially if you're in emergency service or depending on that, or if you need help. It's quite important when you realize just after you get, before you get to Bowman's Marsh, there's no cell service until the first time. So,
Yeah.
it's a pretty big dead highway.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say this. I mean, I know they're looking for $900,000. To me, I wrote right away, grants, question mark, taxpayer. Yeah, there's grants out there. We sure there's one up $300,000 max. I believe there might be other options out there in regards to grants to UDCM and all that. And whether they just put it back to the taxpayers through taxation. You know, I mean, how can I mess that? And you know, to me, when you say it's $900 for 1 year, or you split it over 3 years or whatever, you know, I think that's an option as well. You know, so it's just based off overall the taxpayers, maybe it's done through a taxation, if that's something comes up.
Absolutely. No, there's been a lot of information presented today, so I think all of us need a little bit of time to digest it, and we can certainly bring this forward on an upcoming agenda to discuss further. Councillor Kirkhalka.
So just on that, was one of the questions that I didn't ask by myself. What is their timeline? Like, what would the date they need to know that we were looking to be a partner? I mean, I know he talked about the funds, Councillor Howell that asked that question. That's not a thing to them, like, you know, if it's a 3-year payback or 3 years, it takes us to pay the $900,000 or 4 years, whatever, as long as it's reasonable. What is their timeline? Like, they need to know by this date for us to fit into 2022 for the build season so that we are queued in for the bill.
Yeah.
Not all of a sudden we're late and we're pushed to 2023 when we've had this discussion. We all assume as council, taxpayers assume it as well as residents, that it's happening in 2022 because we've delayed it ourselves as council. It is now pushed to 2023.
Yeah, that was a question I wanted to ask Brian, but I missed it, and I can certainly follow up with him to find out what his timeline is for that. Absolutely. Okay, any other comments or questions? Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering what that does to our discussions with Canadian fibre.
Well, again, this is another option for us to consider. I definitely appreciate the effort that Canadian Fibre Optic has done so far to try and make connectivity or better connectivity a reality for Tumbler Ridge. And as far as I understand, Canadian Fibre Optic would have needed to create a partnership with TELUS for not only the main line going out of Tumbler Ridge, but also access into the conduit. So I don't believe that there has been any conversation with Canadian Fibre Optic and TELUS in that regard yet. I think Canadian Fibre Optic was waiting for us to make a decision or commitment either way. But again, this is just presenting options to us. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and Canadian Fibre Optic didn't give us a number. We didn't have a hard number that they said this is what we're looking for you or a timeline. So I mean, we can still wait for that from them as well. Or there may be a third or fourth or fifth partner out there that wants to do this as well. So.
Councillor Norbury?
You know, on that point, I believe they're also looking for a municipal access agreement to the conduit. Might be a worthwhile venture to have that in place as well. Free market creates the opportunity for consumers.
Yeah, they were looking to see if there was a municipal access agreement in place for that conduit, and Brian has answered that question for me that there is not a municipal access agreement currently, but he's certainly willing to collaborate with us on that if needed. Yeah, that's about all I know. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Adjournment, please. Recommendation. Councillor Lehman?
Motion to adjourn the
Second.
January 7th.
Seconder, Councillor Krokowka. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. If everyone could just stick around for another 5 minutes afterwards, just need to have a small discussion, right?